Hello and welcome to Superconnectivity. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me as always is...
Phil Parrish.
Hey, Phil, great to have you here. So much news, in fact, that I've got news from weeks ago that I need to get to, and then they just keep on piling on more news before I can get to it. So, if you listen to our super stuffed, extra long, we do it for you, all new Marvel Roundup. You know how many books there are, and just getting into the news of the Marvel Universe and just comic books in general is even more so. So, just thinking about where I want to start. One thing I wanted to, let's start light. I want to start light. And we're going to move into some of our heavier stuff in a few minutes. But the light stuff. A couple of weeks ago, Marvel made this Disney. We always want to say Marvel. It's not Marvel. It's Disney. Disney made a statement recently that that basically they're going to keep on making Marvel movies forever.
Yeah.
They said Marvel, Star Wars, no, because they were like, so after the next 3 Star Wars movies, is that it? After the next, after you finish with Phase 3, what's going to happen to the Marvel Universe? And they basically said, it's going to keep on going. We're not going to stop. We're not going to stop making. We're printing money. We're going to continue to print money.
I was going to say, as long as it makes money.
Exactly. As long as it makes money, we're going to keep on making movies, and we're going to keep on making new movies and new stories. And, they've got a backlog of characters to build up and to build out this universe. And it got me thinking, less so with Star Wars, but very much with Marvel Comics. And this idea that could this give Marvel the opportunity to move beyond the 1960s? One criticism of Marvel is that pretty much every character they have of note is from 1960. Like the last new character that they really have is Deadpool, who is even now 25 years old. He basically, Deadpool is as old as the Fantastic Four was at the peak of my teenage comic book enamoration of them. And not for nothing, really disappointed they didn't redo the silver anniversary covers for the Deadpool 25th anniversary. One of the many reasons I won't be buying it. Main reason that it costs $10. But they didn't give that nice little homage shout out with the silver cover with the entire Marvel Universe around it. That's like, you know what? That was your time to shine, and you just dropped the ball. But moving right along. But this could actually give Marvel this chance to move on, because everyone says, they always make the movies, match up with, or they always make the comic books match up with the movies. And okay, great. But now the movies are tied to a real ongoing story. Mm-hmm. And granted, you can have Chris Evans sling a shield for well past when Chris Evans might reasonably be able to swing a shield. Harrison Ford is still punching people in movies. So, you can have Chris Evans around for a long time, but you can age him and you can have him become the old warrior. And, the same thing with Tony Stark. And then you can have other characters coming up in the Marvel Universe to take over these iconic roles. You can have Vance Astro as Major Glory. You can have whomever's going to come next into this field. And it creates this opportunity within Marvel Comics to have characters age out and go away. Right now, because Captain America is coming out, they're going to be basically shoving Steve Rogers' Captain America back down our throats. And I'm not happy about that, as you all know. Mm-hmm. But it does open up this possibility that if we're going to actually have this as the model, when Chris Evans cannot be Captain America anymore, and they're going to let him retire, and we're going to let someone else come up to be the new Captain America, could we actually get to a point where the comic books can move on? And, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Phil. Do you think that'd be a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, would it be nice to actually let these characters grow? Or do you think that's actually going to be a negative, because then the next generation is never going to have their Steve Rogers? They're going to have their own Steve Rogers. They're going to have their own character in that role. But it's not going to be Steve Rogers. It's not going to be the iconic character.
That's what I was gonna say.
And that's, of course,
yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say, yeah, because it's like, you know, if you want to share it with other generations, like if let's start with the comic books. If comic book characters aged like, say, normally, like we do in real life, like your generation, my generation, we wouldn't have had, like, say, Bruce Wayne as Batman.
Well, exactly. But we'd have had Dick Grayson as Batman.
Maybe not, because he first appeared in 1940, so he might have aged out too.
Well, yeah. I mean, okay, so that's true. So when you get to those 1940s characters, I mean, for me as a Marvel fan, you know, we're talking about the 1960s characters, you know, and that was actually kind of the thing. Is that, well, you know, well, that was the thing. Is that when you got to that silver anniversary, that 25-year anniversary, and you actually had the 25th anniversary of Fantastic Four, and they treated it as if 25 years had gone by, where it was, we were beating the Ruskies to the moon. And because, you know, it was a year before the actual moon launch, so it actually made complete sense. And it was actually a couple years before the moon launch, I think. I think it was 67. Anyway, because Spider-Man was 68. I think Fantastic Four was like a year before that. But anyway. But they treated it as if it was real time. That was the last time they really treated it as if it was what they used to say was compressed time rather than sliding time, meaning that, you know, there's a much more adventure going on in the books than you're necessarily seeing, but that the time span is about even. And within that concept, it's you know. But after 25 years, you can't really carry it through. Then you've got to move on to the next generation. What this gives us, you know, when you go back and you look at that point, and at the 25th anniversary of Marvel Comics, 25 years after the first flight of the Fantastic Four, you do step away, you know. After that, we move to sliding time. And really, sliding time had always been there, but that there was, especially under Jim Shooter, there was this idea that I think Jim Shooter pressed for, which was this idea that, no, there is some semblance of real time. Maybe Cap kind of came out of it, maybe late 60s, maybe early 70s, but we're always well within the time frame of Marvel Comics. And then after that, after the 25-year mark, there was really no way you could look back to it. There was no way that you could have, you know, you could no longer have Reed Richards and Ben Grimm serving in World War II. Even if you wanted to say they were really young, you couldn't really have that. And in that concept, you know, that's where we get to this sort of cyclical time and this sliding time, which is that all of Marvel history occurred in the last, you know, 10, 15, 25 years. And, you know, depending on where you want to place the characters, that's where there are in that, you know. You know, Franklin Richards will forever be 7, Valeria will forever be 3, and, you know, you're not going to have that progress beyond that. But if we embrace this idea of the Marvel movie universe influencing things, and we are going to keep the Marvel universe ongoing and contiguous, then we have this opportunity to really let characters age out. And again, like I said, it's not like tomorrow they're going to get rid of Captain America because, you know, for whatever reason. Because, as I say, Chris Evans, long after he can stop being an actual super soldier, and there's clips out there, you know, where you actually see these actors nowadays doing like the wire work, their own wire work, and, you know, and Chris Evans, he's in phenomenal shape. He can like do a standing backflip without too much trouble. You know, it's pretty amazing to watch, but, you know, he can still do stuff like that well into his 60s. You know, they have to use more wires, but they can still keep the movie going, you know, and they can do an Old Man Cap story, and they can do, you know, you can get Hugh Jackman to be Old Man Logan. You can follow these stories because, you know, you can follow these ideas continuously into the future, and then maybe the comic books can have progression. And it's frightening, But at the same time, it's really intriguing. And we're really at a point, I think, at times in comics where we do want something new. We want a progression. We want characters that, I think this is why, in many ways, The Ultimates was such a big seller. Because, in a way, it was breaking this norm. It was breaking the world of comic books away from their historical origins and allowing a new story and a modern story to be told. And now, granted, I think in a lot of ways it kind of went off the rails with some of the Ultimate stories, did things that they didn't have to, but they made their choices and they made their stories. And, in some ways, I think it was too Watchmen-y, but, what are you going to do? That's modern storytelling. And, it's an interesting idea, and I would love to hear from our listeners. Would you like to see Marvel follow the movies in the sense that the movies will be ongoing and the comic books can then progress? Or would you just know, I want to always be stuck in that cycle of life where Cap is always 20 years old forever? And, Reed has gray hair on his temples, but nowhere else, and that's where we're going. If that's where you want it to be, then that's fine. But I'd love to hear our listeners give their opinions on this. And I'm sure this is something that people are going to have opinions on. Because, for what it's worth, for me, as I've grown older, I think it would have been nice to see my heroes grow older. It's kind of, sometimes it's this point where I'm sitting here now as this man who has this history of knowledge, who has been through my own scandals and politics and everything, and it kind of seems like I'm cheating my beloved characters these same progressions. We can't always have Cap not endure the Reagan legacy, not endure Nixon, not endure all the things he's gone through, and you just sort of reboot him every 15 years. As I say, at a certain point, it's not going to make sense for Obama to have been the leader of the Sons of the Serpent. Although I guess they've kind of, through the miracle of Secret Wars, kind of done their soft reboot, done their reboot, but not quite a reboot. Not dissimilar to something DC did, although I think Marvel, back when, some of the books completely rebooted, but other books that were popular didn't reboot. Was that the New 52? The Green Lanterns just continued as they always were. There was no change, but Superman, now he's back in Smallville or something like that.
Well, yeah, because the Batman and Green Lantern books were really popular at the time, so they really didn't do much to reboot them. But yeah, everything else completely started over.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of in that spot here with Marvel, although I think Marvel is maybe hanging the hat on it a bit more, and where they're saying, no, this is a reboot. This is, we've rebuilt the universe, but not everything is where it once was, and so now we're going to see, and we saw right away, here's D-Man back. And I always say that is like this moment when D-Man walks out, and he's just happy-go-lucky Dennis Duffy, no knowledge that he was shot dead and manipulated by evil forces a few issues ago. But he's back, and and so everything, continuity is gone, but at the same time, there is history, and we'll let you know when that history's here. And so, which is a fun way to do it, where everything that has happened in our head canon, but what's actually canon will only be revealed slowly. So in our headcanon, everything that once was there. And in every writer's headcanon, that's the thing you always have to remember. Always remember the writers are all fans. So they've all got their own headcanons as to what exactly has happened. But only the things that are allowed to be out are going to be what is actual canon. So it's an interesting place to be. Honestly, I have to say, it's a great time to be a Marvel fan. It's a great time to be a comic book fan in general. Oh, yeah. Even though we're now at this point of saturation where there are so many books and TV shows and movies. This is this thing I was saying the other day. I want to watch Legends of Tomorrow. I really want to watch Legends of Tomorrow from the Flash Arrowverse. But I keep on forgetting that it's on Thursdays, so I haven't seen any episodes yet. I haven't set my DVR for it yet. And it's like, I want to watch this show so bad, and I haven't gotten the chance to. And I'm really excited because, as has been teased, they're going to be doing a bunch of Justice Society heroes from the Golden Age, including the Red Tornado, the first female superhero of the Justice Society, the first female Justice Society member. Interestingly enough, she actually predates, because Wonder Woman wasn't actually a full member at the time that the Red Tornado joined the Justice Society. The little funny bits of nerd trivia I happen to know. And of course, the Red Tornado was in its own way kind of a joke character. Even though she was actually kind of, it's funny, she's actually very much the basis of Forbushman, although much as in what was it, the X something, the series with Captain Marvel where they fought the Beyonders. Forbushman was one of the characters in that, and was like, I'm the most powerful character in the Marvel universe, but every time I save the universe, it completely reboots, and so no one ever remembers who I was. And much to that extent, you know, Red Tornado through the Smallville storyline that touched on the JSA, or was that the Green? Yeah, I forget which one that was. But anyway, likewise, you know, they call that out, that, you know, sort of had this redemptive arc to her character. But when she first came up, she's this woman. She's a single mom living in the slums of New York. She puts on the red long underwear and kettle pot over her head and beats up people because she's like got mom strength, and that was her storyline, the Red Tornado. And she was, you know, officially a member of the JSA and sort of a gag episode, but you know, one of these issues about continuity was like, well, are the gag episodes part of the story? You know, is it really real? So, but she's going to be there. Golden Age Sandman's going to be there, and they got all these Golden Age characters, and it's one of these things I was thinking that this is actually one of the things that I'll say DC does well in separating their movie and their TV universes, is that they can throw in any character they want in the DC universe, in the DC TV universe, because it doesn't matter if they, you know, they can have General Zod in Supergirl, or they can have one of the other main Superman villains in the DC universe, but, you know, they don't have to worry about clearing that with the movie verse, because if the movie decides to have their own, the movie's going to have their own Flash, you know. So since they've created that separation, if they have something in the TV show, it's fine. They can use these characters. Now, granted, I don't think there was ever going to be a Red Tornado in the cinematic DC universe, but it's nice to know that these things are available to them. You know, it's nice to see them being able to be used in these variations. And it's interesting on two levels. One is because DC has their two universes, their cinematic and their television universes, they can throw in a bunch more characters. They can bring in a lot more superheroes. At the same time, with Marvel, they can't do that. Like I've said, I would love to see a lot more Golden Age heroes in Peggy Carter. And we're not going to see that. We're just not. And why that is, I don't know. Except for the fact, and this is sort of this thing that I was thinking in this, is that, you know, the advantage to Legends of Tomorrow is bringing in all these characters. The disadvantage is if they bring in all these characters, how do you really tell that many stories? You know, if you bring in the Red Tornado and you're going to create this character of, you know, single mom with mom strength beating up bad guys in her little slum neighborhood, you know, essentially sort of an interesting take on Daredevil, if you will. With a little pot on her head for protection. You're going to put that in there. Are you really going to be able to give that story anything more than a passing joke history? Are you really going to be able to have this character, you know, evolve into, you know, a tough woman character? What is the BAFC, you know? A bad BAMF. Something female, BAMF, you know, so something, yeah, BAMFs, BAMFs, yeah. But, you know, can you really have her be that? in that storyline, because you're going to also, then we also have to have the Sandman in there and the Green Lantern in there and all these, and Hourman, which, not for nothing, if your powers expire in an hour, do you really want people to call yourself, do you really want to call yourself Hourman so that everybody knows, well, all we got to do is like keep him busy for an hour and he loses all his powers. You know, it's like, oh, I should have called myself 2 Hour Man. Then they wouldn't know. Dang it. Should have called myself 30-Minute Man, and that way, you know, when I get to that full hour, they're like, what? I thought you only had powers for 30 minutes. Ha ha. Little did you know. Should have called himself Minute Man, because I was like, well, does he have his powers for only a minute, or does he actually have, or is he just like implying that patriotic name? I don't know, you know.
But
so yeah. Anyway, yes.
I was gonna say, I know this is a Marvel cast, but since you threw it to DC, I wanted to hear your thoughts on what do you think about the Grant Gustin Flash is going to be on Supergirl.
That is pretty cool, honestly. Mm-hmm. Now the real question is are they uniting the universes, or are they doing a parallel universe?
I think their plan is to do a parallel universe, because, you know, on the Flash they're doing, you know, Earth 1, Earth 2. I think it's going to be something like that, because I think they said he's going to travel to her Earth, but as of right now she can't travel to different Earths. So
yeah, well, you know, I mean, the alternate universe stuff. I mean, and honestly, and again, this is something that I'm going to give DC props for. They have really, in all their shows, they've always explored this. I remember I loved the Superboy series, when they create the parallel universes and they actually go and they meet, you know, a golden age Superman with, you know, an aged Lex Luthor who was a hero in that universe, and, you know, and then they go to the universe where Superboy gets raised by an evil guy, and so he's the sovereign and he's super evil. And, you know, these were like great episodes of, you know, maybe mediocre series, but hey, I was young enough that this was good. This was a superhero TV show and I loved it. You know, and so DC has always been a little more willing to embrace that aspect of their history. Going all the way back to, you know, the original Batman, you know. I think maybe they got a little further away from that with Wonder Woman. You know, maybe they had less. So, although I think they always had they had super villains in Wonder Woman. This is this thing that we touch on in the Gamma Cast, which is how hard it is to tell a Hulk story without a super villain. You know, it's like, because there's no one that can fight the Hulk, and so you have him fight a bear one issue, you have an episode, you have him fight a gorilla a next one. But, you know, at the end of the day, there's not really anyone that, you know, the best you can do is maybe have like 6 guys run at him, but he still throws them all off, you know. And so most of what you're going to have for the Hulk is he's just busting through walls, which is kind of static, you know. You don't, but you never really have a villain that can like match the Hulk. So that's, you know, and to that extent, DC is much more willing to go to their back bench. And again, that's the thing. It's like they can go to the back bench and bring out all these obscure villains and heroes and give that fan service. And why Marvel doesn't do that more, you know, it's interesting. And it goes maybe to this whole idea between the Marvel TV and cinematic universes, and which has gotten much more of a break in recent years. As Feige has gotten Marvel Cinema spun off from the Marvel brand to be much more directly under the DC brand. And they've made the point, like, no, we're still all the same universe. We're still working in this way. But now the movies have their own pipeline that's separate from the TV series. And so, which puts the TV series back into the section where they have to go get more crumbs. You know, they can only get what characters they can be given, which I think is a mistake. I think that really the whole point of having this expanded universe is that you can introduce all of our little side characters into that television universe, and then they can pop up in the Netflix universes, and then they can pop up in the cinematic universes, and it can be a continuity. But, you know, I can see that there is this prejudice at play where probably people don't want to do that. And part of it might just be Ark Perlmutter, who is, as it has come out, is freaking insane. Yeah, there's articles out there about exactly how problematic Ike Perlmutter has been for Marvel. And
And for those at home, Charlie, who is Ike Perlmutter?
Ike Perlmutter is the guy who owns Marvel. Basically, when Marvel went bankrupt, he got investors together, and he said, we can buy this thing, and this thing is worth billions, and people just don't realize it. People have no idea how valuable Marvel is. And Ike Perlmutter bought it up and basically proved how valuable Marvel was. So much so that Disney decided to go buy it up, and made this guy a billionaire many times over. And the guy's doing very well for himself. And hey, I'm going to give him this. The guy made his bones, but he's got some odd views about marketing where he does not feel that he's very old school in this way that he approaches the superhero model, which is that he says he sees apparently that the market for superheroes is not females. The market for superheroes is exclusively males, which is interesting, to say the least. Certainly as a male, I can say, yes, I am the market for it. But I think that it tries to box in things. And even to the point where they say he is the guy who like squashes the Black Widow merch. He's the guy who, even when you're selling Avengers products to girls, which means you're selling a pink T-shirt with the Avengers on it, you're not going to put Black Widow on it. He's the guy that's really like, they say that. Of course, that could all just be, popular mythos. A lot of times you do get this popular mythos in these storylines where, we're going to say this person is the guy doing it, when really it's a much more complex question. But of course, we in the comic book industry, we like heroes and villains, and Ike Perlmutter makes a pretty interesting villain. To that extent, that gets me to actually one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, which was this minor controversy. And it's a minor controversy. Let's make no bones about it. This was not, oh my goodness, it's the end of the, I cannot read Marvel Comics anymore because of this. When Donald Trump skipped the Iowa debate, the last one, because he was afraid of Megyn Kelly. No, there's no argument about it. The guy has a fragile. My 6-year-old and my 9-year-old have better egos than Donald Trump, and my kids break into tears when the show isn't on that they want to watch. So trust. Donald Trump has a very fragile ego.
Yeah, you know what? I don't want to get too much into politics, but I think most of that. Do you think it's the persona that Trump puts on, because the crazier he acts, the more free press he's going to get?
Well, certainly, I think a lot of it is that. But I think, Madonna once said, even the lie you tell tells something about you, because it's the lie you chose to tell. And, if there's someone who knows about image, it's Madonna Louisa Veronica Ciccone not actually from Pontiac, Michigan, I've been told. She actually is from a suburb of Pontiac, but anyway. Yeah. But, everybody from a suburb of one of the big cities in Michigan always say we're from that city. It's like I'll say I'm from around Detroit, it's because I can't actually even say I'm from downriver, because I'm actually too west to be from downriver. But anyway. Anyways, but it is this idea that and no, I don't want to get too much into politics, although this is the political season. This is an era where politics are very much on the mind of comic books and comic book producers and comic book readers, both good and ill. And Donald Trump opted not to go to the last Iowa debate for whatever reason. There seems to be an implication that he did not like the choice of moderators, one of whom was Megyn Kelly, whom he felt treated him unfairly in a previous debate. Other people said she simply asked a question that he didn't like. Mm-hmm. Debates can be had. But instead of doing the debate, he had a little fundraiser outside of Iowa even. I think it was outside of Iowa, where he says, I'm going to raise money for the troops, because, that's what you do when you're a Republican. You raise money for the troops, whatever that means. And whatever that actually means for him, he asks for money for the Donald J. Trump Foundation, of which veterans charities are one of the things they give money to. And Ike Perlmutter, who is a friend of Donald Trump's because they're both New York businessmen, billionaires who've gone around and done a lot of business. And he wrote a check for like $1 million to the Donald J. Trump Foundation at this time. And as you may know, as many people may know, Ms. Marvel, both G. Willow Wilson and I'm blanking on her name. Samant I believe is her last name. I can't remember her first name, but these are the people that created Ms. Marvel, and G. Willow Wilson is the current writer of Ms. Marvel. Have both had things to say about how uncomfortable they are with the way Trump has depicted Muslims in his speeches. Fair enough, and so there was this very negative view of this idea that like Perlmutter, who is this guy who is very important in Marvel, although, always been controversial, is making this donation to a guy who is even more controversial than Ike Perlmutter is because his business is being controversial. And what G. Willow Wilson said was basically, it's not going to solve the problem to stop buying the comic books. And she actually calls out in this that I may get fired for what I'm saying, but it's okay. I'm going to keep on making good stories about that go counter to what Donald Trump is saying. And at the end of the day, what Ike Perlmutter did, he gave a donation that may or may not have gone to the troops, but it wasn't a political contribution to Trump. It was to a charitable foundation. It did give aggrandizement to Trump, but only in a circumstantial way, and it isn't as big of a deal. And it really struck me, and this is sort of where I get into this idea, is that this is the differentiation in culture between feminism and what I will call machismo. Because I don't feel that chauvinism per se, which is very much about hierarchy, is the opposite of feminism. I think, because I don't think feminism is per se about a lack of hierarchy. To me, what feminism is about, and this is as a white male, my view on feminism is, what feminism is about, it's about viewing the complexity of situations. And machismo is about viewing the simplicity of situations. And it isn't to say that one is right and one is wrong. Because, of course, as people will say, if you get too much into the complexity of situations, you get into this equivocation of situations, and you wind up, rationally walking yourself, down the primrose path into oblivion. Likewise, if you oversimplify things, you dedicatedly march down the primrose path to oblivion, and the idea is that there is, but that this is the differentiation. It is between saying the world is black and white, the world has easy answers, and saying the world is a billion shades of gray and there are no easy answers. But that the way we get to answers is through directed, often quiet, deliberative discussion versus we take our gut and we make our choices and we let the chips fall where they may. And there are going to be times in our lives where we're going to want to do one, and there's going to be times where we're going to want to do the other. But as political philosophy, as sociological philosophies go, to me, that's the differentiation. And I do feel that right now we're at this point in history where we are sort of in this tug of war between the iconic idea of machismo, which, again, we're calling it machismo, but it doesn't necessarily even have to be about masculinity, because machismo is as much about femininity as it is about masculinity. It's about the idea that there is a set, simple answer to a situation, that this is how men are, this is how women are. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And trust me, there's been $1 billion sold on that concept, and there is, even arguably science to say that there are structural differences between men and women beyond the obvious, that emotionally and mentally we approach things differently. And feminism is about the more complex emotional relationships that exist and how we deal with things. And of course, when we look at comic books as a genre, we do see this shift. It's an interesting thing. When people talk about comic books, and they always think about comic books as just punching Nazis. And there's always that aspect of punching Nazis. But there's also this aspect of talking about why we're punching a Nazi.
Yeah.
And and that's the thing that I think most people forget about comic books is that it's not a silent medium. It's not bish bam pow. It's we have to do this because this is this and that, and we're going to stand against this and giving reasons and explanations. And this actually dates back all the way to the Homeric epics, and Achilles in his tent, sitting there not fighting anybody, but talking about the futility of war and the purpose of war and why we're here and why we're doing what we're doing. This is as ancient to our stories that it is not so much that we don't want people to punch people, but we do want to know why. That just punching isn't enough. There has to be a reason. And once you get into the question of what is the reason for punching, suddenly now we start deconstructing why are we punching, and we start talking about whether or not we even have to punch. And that's where we get books like Squirrel Girl and dozens of other new style comic books like Squirrel Girl, like Captain Marvel, where there is this idea of how do we break this idea down? What are we doing? Why are we approaching it in this old simplistic way when there are more complex ways to deal with things? And of course, then you have a book like Captain Marvel where Carol just says, screw it, I just want to punch something. To give you that opposite aspect that, machismo is not about gender. Machismo is not about, one versus the other. It's about how you approach things. Because in that machismo view, in that Donald Trumpian, and on the other side, on that Bernie Sanders that there is right and there is wrong, and we're going to punch the Nazis till we win view. And, who everybody thinks the Nazis are is different for everybody, but we're going to punch them till we win. That's machismo. And it can be on the left with Bernie Sanders, it can be on the right with Donald Trump, and it can be in a lot of gradations between those arcs. But it is this idea that there is right and there is wrong, and we're going to force the good to come the way we see good should be. And then on the other end, the feminist ideal is, well, let's slow down. What are we really talking about here? When you say we're going to make good happen, what is good? And it comes back to what I think is, one of the great novels of the 20th century, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where everyone is rushing to find the answer to life, the truth, the life, the universe, and everything, and they find out the answer to life, the truth, the universe, and everything is 42, because no one ever bothered to ask, well, what was the question to life, the universe, and everything? And so you have this answer. You have the answer that Nazis are bad, but how do we get to this idea of how do we not have Nazis? And you never actually stop to ask, how do we not have Nazis? To bring it back into comic book terms, or if you don't want to go Nazis, if this is a further German broadcast, for how to get rid of Hydra. How do we stop the existence of Hydra from the very inception? How do we stop people wanting to be Hydra? How do we talk through our problems? And that I think, and again, this is where I think what G. Willow Wilson wrote was really great, because it does make the point that, look, we're not going to punch our way out of this. You're not going to stop Donald Trump by punching him in the nose, because all punching Donald Trump is going to do is make someone else want to punch somebody else. And even as much as you want to punch, as much as you want to sock Hitler in the jaw, then you just make Hitler a victim too, And you think about it, that the big guy, the big Captain America guy, punching scrawny little Hitler, Hitler has a whole army behind him, but in that moment, you must say, dude, he's just a little guy, because we're all victims too. But of course, then you get too much into that view, then you're walking down that primrose path of everyone's a victim, everyone needs to be built up, and there are no easy answers. And that's, I think that's the cycle of the sociological debate, is that if you say there are easy answers, you're just going to cause more problems. But if you say there are no easy answers, then you never get an answer. And somewhere between all of that is where we want to be. But there's no way to articulate. Well, actually, no, there is a way to articulate, which was, I believe that was was it Aristotle or was it Socrates? I want to say it was Aristotle, had the idea that righteousness is the median between the extremes of the virtues, that there is cowardice and there is foolhardiness, and bravery is between them. That bravery is not, it is shying away from cowardice but not being so brave that you're just being foolhardy. And then, there is prudishness and licentiousness. And then there is, that there is this path that you're supposed to walk. But of course, it's easy to draw a line, but exactly to find where that line is the difficulty. And that, of course, is Zeno's paradox, because you can always get into infinitesimally smaller mean, and you will never actually be right in that middle. And that's my super connections for this week, I think, Phil. And I didn't even get to the big Mattel Hasbro merger.
There's always next week.
So, and that was really cool, because that was crazy. The whole thing about it, because first Disney moves the princesses to Hasbro, and then Mattel makes the superhero Barbies, and now, it's like, Disney shuns them, but now Warner's is bringing them in, and they're going to show that they can make the superhero princesses. But now Mattel and Hasbro are going to merge and become one gigantic toy giant with G.I. Joe and the My Little Ponies, and the G.I. Joes will ride the My Little Ponies into battle, and I want that movie. Make it happen, somebody. My Little Ponies versus G.I. Joe, or My Little Ponies and G.I. Joe versus the Masters of the Universe and Cobra. There we go. That's what we want. We want He-Man come to what's the name of the place in My Little Pony? I know Cloudsdale is one of the places, but it's Canterlot. Anyway, they come to the My Little Pony universe because they have to battle Skeletor. Meanwhile, they team up with the G.I. Joes and the Transformers. They all go into battle to face Skeletor, who is aligned with Cobra, and Serpentor and
Megatron.
Megatron, yes, and the Decepticons. The Decepticons join with this is the universe I want. I want this expanded universe. Make it happen, somebody, please. Okay. That is enough super connections for 1 week. If you would like to connect with me on a personal level, feel free to write to me at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. And you can listen to me on the all-new Marvel Roundup with Phil Parrott, which is slightly longer than this particular podcast. And you can also listen to me on the Gamma Cast with Dave White on the all-new 80s reboot. Or not the all-new 80s reboot, but the 80s rewind reboot. The 80s channel here on Southgate Media. Gamma Cast, me and Dave White, we talk the Incredible Hulk series, and we try to keep it under a half hour, although people are saying they want more, so who knows, we may talk longer on that. And if you'd like to tweet with me about anything that I'm tweeting, you can tweet me at Charlie Esser, that's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. And Philip, where can they find you?
Before I get to my plugs, I just want to say, people, you really should be paying for this podcast. You know how much information you got dropped on you tonight? Just amazing. But if you want to talk to me, anything Marvel, anything DC, anything Charlie Esser, you can email me, nightwingpdp@gmail.com. On Twitter, I am at nightwingpdp. I've been writing a new article for tvbinges.com on the superhero TV of the week, so check that out every week. I also have 2 blogs on Southgate Media Group, True Believers blog and the Legends of DC blog, so check those out. And of course, always listen to All New Marvel Roundup and Superconnectivity.
And Phil, just so you know, I don't do this for the money. The millions of dollars I make on this podcast, yes, they're nice, but
Send his children to college, people.
Yes, I do this for the love of the game. Anyway, kids, folks, everyone who puts up with us week after week, thank you. I appreciate you, and connect with us again next week. Thank you.